Greetings everyone, Slizzle466 here. I am kind of back on YouTube. I'm going to be releasing one video a week, most often a best decks video, but maybe something different like a crafting video, something like that. But without further ado, I've got 18 decks to share with you today for climbing in the wild meta, starting with Reno Blood Death Knight. So Death Knight's a new class. You can build it in different types depending on the runes that you use. The triple blood rune is probably one of the best combos because the cards like Vampiric Blood lets you gain extra health, which means that you can also heal up more, in this case because of the Reno deck. And you've also got the Alexandros Mograine, which is nice. It's a decent body and do a bit of damage to your opponent at the end of every one of your turns. And Soul Stealer is absolutely nuts, destroying all other minions for 8 mana, getting a bunch of corpses. This is a very tempo-oriented list, so you just kind of play for value, make your way through the game, heal up with Reno, get value with Zeph, and then finish off with things like Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, Sire Denathrius. Yes, it got nerfed, but it's still pretty good. You can also disrupt your opponent using things like Mutinous and Theatar. So just a nice build. I've had a bit of success with this list, nothing amazing, but definitely one of my favorite Death Knight builds to play. Another Death Knight list that I've seen floating around is Even Frost, so Triple Frost Death Knight. And the reason you'd want to run Triple Frost is that Marrow Manipulator is pretty good. If your opponent doesn't have any minions and you have enough corpses, it's essentially a 6-mana Pyroblast, which is really good. I didn't have a ton of success with this specific list, but basically, again, you're kind of trying to play for tempo, getting a bit of a board going. The Astalar Bloodsworn is nice to get the 2 damage, then the 5 armor, and eventually the 16 spread out damage, which is really nice. But basically, you're just trying to get, basically, everything in here is frost spells. You're just trying to do a bunch of damage to your opponent's face, get a bunch of minions on board. It's okay, as I mentioned, but something different. Looking at Demon Hunter, first one I've got here is Reno Demon Hunter. I actually had some pretty good success with this list. Similar to Death Knight, it's a tempo-oriented build of a Reno deck. So you're kind of just curving out nicely along the way. Your finishes here are the Kurtrus combined with the Expendable Performers and your Fellfire Deadeye to have a free hero power. So if your opponent has a decent board, you can clear it out. Hero power over and over and over again. Yes, you can do this with non-Reno builds as well, but having the Reno, having the Zephyrus is nice, and you got a lot of fun stuff to play around with here. Fell Demon Hunter, on the other hand, I personally didn't have any success with this list at all. I only played 3 games though, so maybe that was a contributing factor. But one thing I do like about this list, it's running the new Soul Eater's Scythe, or Sith, I don't know how to pronounce that. But just make sure you only have 3 minions in the deck. In this case, we have the Silvermoon Arcanist, we've got the Loatheb, and the Jay Starkweaver. So they get blown up into 1-mana spells, which lets you discover one of those when you draw the 1-mana spell. So you can get the minion you need at that specific point. Otherwise, you're running all spells and weapons in the deck, but I just didn't work very well for me. The last Demon Hunter list I want to mention is a list that did work well for me, Outcast Demon Hunter. So you're running a lot of Outcast cards that are played out of the left or right side of your hand to get the additional effect. You've got cards that synergize with Outcast, such as the Redeemed Pariah, which is nice. Again, I probably pronounced that wrong. But again, just lots of value, kind of mid-rangey. And just some nice value here with the just with all the synergies with Outcast. It worked pretty decent for me, and I had a lot of fun playing it. Moving on to Druid, I've got Jade Druid. This list is really fun. So it's just your everyday Jade Druid, nothing special. It's got all your typical Druid cards you see, like the Floops Florius Gloop, the Flipper Friend, Scale of Onyxia, things like that. But it's got a cute little combo in here with the new Anubrakan. So this is an 8 mana 7/7 undead battlecry, gain 8 armor. This turn, your minions cost armor instead of mana. So because as a druid, you gain an absolute ton of armor, what you want to try and do here is have the final piece of this puzzle ready. It's an 8 mana card that does 16 distributed damage. You can combo that with Bran, which is nice. A lot of the time you may not even need to use this because you could also synergize with your Guff to have 20 mana anyway. So that, I mean, I never actually pulled off that win condition. I just basically just did Jade things, or I milled my opponent for a ton. So you'll notice there's double naturalize in here, double due process. So you can do the mill druid game if you want. So you can be a mill druid, you can be a Jade druid, you can just be a control druid, you can be OTK. You've got a lot of different opportunities to play around with in this very fun list that I had some decent success with. Looking at Hunter, the only list I've really seen floating around is Reno Hunter. As you can see, I haven't tested this list since I'm missing 2 of the cards. I don't own Arelon or the newly printed Hope of Kel'Thas. But this specific list, it's a very control-y list, though it is kind of heavy on the early game, just to have some survival mechanisms. So it's kind of running a bit of the Beast synergy. It's got a lot of your typical tech cards you see, like the Cult Neophyte, the Dirty Rat. There's no Theatar in here. But you do have your Dynatema Brand since it's a Reno deck. So if Reno Hunter is your sort of thing, this is a nice build to give a spin. Moving on to Paladin. For Paladin, I've only seen one list floating around, and it's Reno Paladin. It's very similar to what we saw before. The typical Reno Paladin lists you see are based around getting Nozdormu the Timeless out early, so you can play all your big greedy things. As for new cards in the list, there isn't too much. Order in the Court, I don't think is a new card. I think that card is from the previous expansion. Yeah, that's Castle Nathria. But I do know there's one new card in here, and that is the... Where is it? It's our new dragon. There he is. Or she. I don't know the gender. Anachronos. 7 mana 8/8 battlecry. Send all other minions 2 turns into the future. So it's an interesting little card. It gives you an extra 2 turns if your opponent has a very awkward board for you to deal with. But otherwise, it's the same Reno Paladin list we've seen in the past, and this list sometimes works great for me. This time around didn't work great for me. It's always been a coin flip for me, but it's a decent Paladin list to try out. Looking over at Priest, yes, there's Big Priest that runs no new cards, so I don't want to mention it, but I will mention Reno Priest. Reno Priest is pretty much exactly how it was before. So the most successful Reno Priest lists, they typically run the Prince Renathal, and they run the Dark Bishop Benedictus. So they play a value game, just slowly pinging down your opponent over time. One new card in this list that the author of the list said isn't actually necessary is the Sister Svalna. So this gives you a Vision of Darkness to your hand. And what Vision of Darkness does is it is a 3 mana spell that lets you discover a shadow spell, but the Vision of Darkness always stays in your hand. So basically, if you have the 3 mana every turn, you can just keep on discovering shadow spells forever and get infinite value. Looking at Mage, we have Quest Mage. Now, Quest Mage actually got some new tools, and I actually enjoyed this build more than what I normally play. The main new thing we see in here is the Arcane Worm. It's a 1 mana 1/2 battle cry. Add an Arcane Bolt to your hand. And the Arcane Bolt, as you can see here, it's a 1 mana deal 2 damage, but it has Mana Thirst 8. So Mana Thirst means that if you have that much mana, then you get a different effect. In this case, if you've got 8, 9, or 10 mana, it deals 3 damage instead. So just a nice way to keep your quest going a little faster. I found I was completing my quest 1 or 2 turns faster than I typically did with this list, but otherwise it's your infinite turn quest mage that you either love or hate to see. Surprisingly, I actually had more success with Reno Quest Mage as opposed to regular Quest Mage. So this plays out just like Quest Mage, but you've got, you got your Reno cards, you've got your Zeph, your Reno, of course. And we've also got the Reno the Relicologist. But you got some new stuff in here, which is also fun to play around with. You've got the Arc Splitter, weapon that gives you 2 arc. So is it a weapon or a minion? It's a minion, sorry. I don't know why I said it's a weapon. It's a minion that gives you 2 arcane bolts to your hand when it dies, so that's some nice value. You've also got in this list the Grand Magister Ramuth, which is kind of like Yogg in a way, but it's recasting all the spells that you've cast that didn't start in your deck. You might be thinking, why is there a Flame Leviathan in here? It's actually a cute little inclusion because it synergizes with Seafloor Gateway. So if you're playing against an aggro deck and they've got a relatively annoying board that you need to deal 2 damage to, well, you can play the Seafloor Gateway, draw the Leviathan, deal the damage. Just be careful not to draw it and kill yourself, which I may have done once. Not twice, but only once. Looking at Rogue, there's a lot of stuff going on with Rogue, and the main reason for that is the new Rogue spell, Shadow of Demise. I think this card's amazing. So each time you cast a spell, transform this into a copy of it, and that copy does last over multiple turns. But it's just, again, like this is Edwin Rogue. So Edwin Rogue is all about getting getting the Van Cleef out really early and huge, or getting the other Edwin out in the mid game, big and huge. But as for new stuff, you've also got the, I think Ghostly Strike is new. Is it new? Yep, this is a new one. Really nice. Just helps you cycle through your deck, do a bit of ping damage, which is nice. But the Shadow of Demise is the star here, which gives it a bit of a boost, just giving you maybe an extra coin, or maybe an extra card if you need an extra one off Gone Fishing. It's just really great, lots of good value to help you do things that you may not typically be able to do. I should also mention the Sinstone Graveyard as well. You're playing so many cards in a turn, sometimes you just bring out a giant stealth minion and your opponent quite often can't deal with it. Concoction Rogue is a new archetype. I didn't have a ton of success with this specifically over the 3 or 4 games I played, but if you want to play around with concoctions, give it a go. I won't go through what they all are, but they're basically all 3 mana spells, and if you add multiples of them to your hand, they can combine in pairs to give you some value. For example, maybe deal 3 damage, draw 2 cards is one of the combos you can do. But essentially what you're trying to do here is get a big Van Cleef or get a giant dagger and then get a bunch of value off the concoctions. Mine Rogue, I've also had a ton of success with. Again, it's all about the Shadow of Demise. Whether it's getting an extra backstab, if you happen to have both of your mines and you're a backstab short, or you might even need to get an extra extortion. But again, just great value. Otherwise, it's just Mine Rogue. You can do a ton of damage out of nowhere. Just make sure you have the Snowfall Graveyard up You might have your blade at 1 durability, and then you could maybe draw one of the mines. Just be careful, this also draws the blade. But you can draw the mine, do a bunch of damage, play the mine, and then backstab it or extortion it to kill it, and do an absolute ton of damage to your opponent's face. We've also got Pillager Rogue. Again, it's the same as before, but with the addition of Shadow of Demise. This is a list that lots of people do well with, but for me it never does. Just because I'm not that good at the list, that doesn't mean the list is bad. It just means that I need to learn it a little bit better. But basically, you've got Spirit of the Shark, you've got Scabs to reduce things, and you're essentially trying to play a ton of cards in one turn, and then smack your opponent with the Spectral Pillager. Looking at Shaman, we've got a cute little OTK list. I thought that this was a meme at first, and it is kind of a meme, but I gave it a spin, and I did have a positive win rate with it. So what you'll notice here is it is a Renathal list, mainly just to get extras of good cards, and the deck cycles pretty fast, in addition to blowing out the bottom end if you've got everything you need for the combo. Now the question you might be having is, well, what is this combo? Well, you've got the new Bone Lord Frost Whisper, 6 mana 6/6 undead, Death Rattle. For the rest of the game, your first card each turn costs 0. You die in 3 turns. So essentially what you want to do with this combo is once the Frost Whisper is dead, when you start your turn, or if you're in the middle of the turn and this card dies, you play the Alakir for 0. You slap a Rockbiter on it if you need to, and then you play Criminal Lineup. So this is 2 mana, 8 up to 10 mana, and then you've got your Alakir with +6 attack, and you get an additional 3 of those, which is a ton of damage. We've also got Big Shaman. As much as I love Big Shaman, I didn't do too well with this list. Maybe I didn't high roll well enough. But as for the new cards in the list, this is one of them, Prescience. So draw 2 minions for each that costs 5 or more, summon a 2/3 spirit with Taunt. So this is nice if you've got the Ancestor's Call in your hand, but you're desperate for a minion. So that can help you out there. You've also got a new one here, Overlord Drakuru. This is a 9 mana 6/8 Rush Wind Fury. After this attacks and kills a minion, resurrected on your side. Pretty fun little addition. I don't know if it's necessary, but it's nice to run new stuff. But otherwise, it's Big Shaman. It's not that good anymore because of the nerf to Lightning Bloom. So you can't high roll on turn, say, 1 or 2 anymore. But it's still a fun deck to play around with. There are no warrior decks here because warrior is just absolutely awful. If you're really that desperate to play a warrior deck, you can just play pirate warrior. Just keep in mind you probably won't do too great, but you'll steal a couple wins here and there if you're trying to complete some quests. As for warlock, there hasn't been very much experimentation with the class, and that's because discard warlock is absolutely insane. Probably the best deck in the meta. There are a wide variety of different builds out there. And so to address the question that many of you might be thinking if you're already playing this archetype, and it is, where is that card? What's the name of it? Yeah, Tiny Knight of Evil. You might be asking, where is Tiny Knight of Evil? Some people run it, some people don't. It is actually kind of easy to deal with because you can silence it, single target removal it. A lot of the time, it can be really good if it does high roll or stick. But I'm not a huge fan of it myself. So this is the list I've been messing around with. If you're unfamiliar with the archetype, basically it's all about getting a Malchezaar's Imp followed by an Expired Merchant, maybe to discard a Hand of Gul'dan. But the big things are the Tome Tampering, where you shuffle copies of your cards from your hand into your deck, discard your hand. Because you've got so many amazing discard synergies, such as Fist of Jaraxxus, you've got the new Suffocating Shadows. So, oh no, that's from Nathrios. It's kind of new. When you play or discard this, destroy random enemy minion. You've got the Soul Barrage, which is a new card, which is insane. You'd never want to play this for 5, but discarding it, dealing 6 damage randomly, including to your opponent's face, is great. If you redraw it off the Tome Tampering, it's 1 mana, which is insane. You've also got Walking Dead, which I believe is new. Yep, it's a new one. So this one, even for 3 mana, it's not that bad, but getting it for free is great. So lots of synergies with the discarding to just do a ton of damage, refill your deck. Pretty obnoxious. We're still early in the meta though, so I wouldn't be, you know, yelling out the nerf wagon yet. Let's see how it goes for a couple weeks. But that's why you don't see many Warlock decks here, because basically if you're going to play Warlock, just play discard, because it's absolutely insane. If you want to give any of these decks a try yourself, you will find all the deck codes in the description below. If you are a mobile user and it is difficult for you to copy those deck codes, there is an easy to enter link to my Discord. You can visit the deck lists only channel and you will find all the deck codes sitting in there, easier to copy from a mobile device. If you want to help support this channel, you can click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, leave a comment, let me know how your climbs have been going in Wild, and until next time, hope to see you again.